Welcome on in. I got an email earlier. I wanted to read a little part of it. I thought you'd like. This is a little excerpt from an email. It says, I know that you are against problems in games like kernel level anti-cheat and in shitification in general, comma. So I was curious if that sentence is in an email to me. I think this person watched at least 2 clips of me, which is nice. That's good. Sometimes I get emails about like sponsorships and things, and they'll be like, hello username, but it's like not my username. Is the people from Stop Killing Games that emailed me this. And then they just sent me some link and they're just like, here's some videos about what it's about and stuff. And it does seem like a personalized email, genuinely, as I like read through it. Seems good. I know there was some like controversy, not against them necessarily. I think it was against Thor or something, right? There was some, I don't know. I did not go through and look into that much, because I'll be honest, anytime something seems dramatic, I just hard avoid it. And the only time I really look at it or comment on it is when it actually has to do with me in some way. But if it doesn't have to do with me, I just don't comment typically. And even if I do comment, I try to keep it very like chill, very neutral. Let's talk about this thing a little bit, but not like go crazy on either side. Even if I am heavily on one side, I'll still like be like, let's just keep the discussion neutral, because I just don't want to invite and bait people that want drama content, you know? So for this one, I haven't fully looked into it yet, because I didn't start hearing heavily about it until some stuff became dramatic, and then I was like, ooh, I'll wait until that gets quieter. There's a drama between them and Thor about how Thor doesn't get what the initiative was all about. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, I'll enjoy some of his content. There are also times I think he speaks really quickly before he has full information, which I get. I've done it a couple times here and there, but I'm very open to people telling me otherwise. If they're like, oh, actually, it's this, I will stop what I'm saying. If people in chat are like, oh, it's this, and I'll be like, let's look at this, and I'll Google, which I think is a habit people should get into. Like, you know what I mean? It's one thing if you actually do have just an opinion that is not the common take. Like if you double down because you genuinely feel that way, then you genuinely feel that way, right? That's understandable, but at the same time, like, you gotta make sure you sit there and look into something, right? My opinion has changed on some things, right? Where I've like said what I think with the partial information that I have, and I'll usually say that too. I'll be like, well, I've seen this and that, and this is what I think so far. But then, you know, if I see people in chat saying otherwise in like a large amount, I'll always, like, after stream, go look at that thing, right? Like, I'll always try to like do more research and then come back and give more thoughts after. Or if my thoughts have changed, or if I do still think a certain way, but I want to like add more thoughts to it and clarify, I'll always try to do that, you know? And I feel like when you are a streamer that's seen as an informative person, whether you want that or not, whether that's the vibe you were going for or not, if that's how people see you, you should spend that time, you know? It's tough. And I understand it, because I am also a person that sounds confident in everything I say, even if I don't feel that way. Even if I say words like, yeah, I'm not sure, I've read this and I think, it doesn't matter, because the way I speak, but the timbre of my voice, the cadence of my voice makes people think that I think I'm right all the time, right? I think he's got the same curse. At the same time, yeah, he should look shit up more. You know, spend a little more time reading. It's hard to do that when you stream for like 12 fucking hours, but you got to pick and choose where you put your time, you know? I think a lot of his issues, he's really cocky. Yeah, he said a lot of things. For me, it's smaller things. He said a lot of things that I agree with and a lot of things I disagree with. It's a mixed bag. And I get it, because I have some opinions that will always be things that I like. I just don't really say very often, because I know I have really standard corpo background, and the way I see the world through that lens is different from a lot of people. When it comes to like him in particular, there's a lot of stuff that he'll say where I'm like, I get where you're coming from. I'll still disagree. I get like the kernel first thought he's stating, because sometimes it's like, occasionally he'll say a business thing and I'm like, oh, I know where that comes from. Like, I get that. But it's kind of like, sometimes you shouldn't double down on it, because it's just a perspective that people won't fully understand unless they've also been in that position. But if you have a different perspective, you just have to talk about all perspectives, right? Especially if your perspective is a really specific one, then you have to sit there and listen, you know, and have conversations with all these people that are in your chat that have very different perspectives. You know, you have to really like try to say things in multiple different ways in a way that they would understand, and you have to listen to them and understand where they're coming from, which is they have not seen the things you've seen, and you haven't seen the things that they've seen sometimes, you know? And that's why I'll come off when I'm talking about certain things, sometimes I'll come off as like too neutral. People will be like, oh, that was a softball, like you should have been harder on this thing, that thing. But it's more like, I just like to sit around and explore every avenue and talk about every perspective around a thing a little more like reporting on a thing than just giving purely my opinion. Like, I'm speaking from a place of, here are a lot of different perspectives that we could talk about, not like this is my opinion purely. I don't always do that, you know, which I think more people with wider audiences should consider doing that, especially if you're seen as an informative person. That's why I like to step back a little bit and try to talk about the different perspectives, because I'm not trying to influence super hard in a direction, even if I think I'm right, you know, unless it's something so blatant and it's like completely black and white, but most things aren't, you know? So that's why I like to speak the way I do on stream. So when I see someone with a large audience really doubling down on certain things, I'm like, maybe just talk about the different perspectives, give a little opinion on it. But you don't have to say what you think is right or wrong necessarily. You could just talk about them. I do that when I'm talking about Twitch all the time. I'm like, I think this is this, I think this is that. I'll give opinions, but I'll also just talk about everyone's thoughts that I've heard, you know? Because everyone has different thoughts. I don't know. Problem is the digging of heels, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So to be honest, he didn't really understand the thing at all and then kind of misrepresented what it was. Yeah, and I think it would be really easy, like, if that were the case, to then make a follow-up video and be like, you could make the title of your video like, I thought this thing was this. I was wrong. Boy, was I wrong. And you can give like a lighthearted feeling too. You don't have to like feel like you're getting shit on to say you're wrong. You could be like, oh man, you know, I really looked into it and hey, there's a real problem. And then you just talk about the problem, right? I think he could have made a banger video out of that. Admitting you're wrong on the internet, showing weakness, they'll eat you alive for it. That is also true, and I will also say that, yes, if you are wrong about something, or you're like partial right, partial wrong, if you do not double down or go silent, if you do say I've changed my mind, whatever, there are a lot of people on the internet that will go, I changed their mind, or ooh, we got them, boys, and they celebrate you changing your mind as if they won something, as if it made you weaker, as if it put you underneath them. They get crazy about it, and then they will harass you to no end, and yeah, they smell blood in the water, and those people just get worse and worse and worse, and they attach to you as a hater even more. So I will say, admitting fault and changing your opinion publicly is very difficult for that reason as well. For larger streamers, it's often that it's like it will cause you long-term harm, which is why some people will just go silent. That's why I think just being quieter is, you know, sometimes the option for people. I think on paper it's not the right option, but in practice it is, which sucks. No one wants to have to do that. No one wants to have to like change their opinion but not be able to tell everyone, oh yeah, I changed my mind, here's why. But like, unfortunately that fuels haters. Like doing the right thing can fuel those people sometimes. So it's tough. It's really, you're put in a really hard position. I don't think doubling down is the right answer though either though. I think that's when you just go like, yeah, you know, my opinion's shifted a little bit, but I'm still exploring, and then you just don't talk about it. You just go to the next thing, right? Maybe over time you drop little tidbits of information of how you feel, but you don't make a big meaty push out of it, etc. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a black and white issue. Basically, the only way to avoid having people be like that toward you and having all these issues on the internet as an influencer, the only way to avoid it is to be right all the time. Or not just to be right, actually, scratch that. It's to side with the side that people perceive as right all the time. So if there's an issue that the majority of people are objectively wrong on, the only way to avoid hate, to avoid as an influencer getting like a storm and stirring up drama, the only way to avoid it is to double down on whatever people commonly think. Yeah, publicly traded company method. Exactly. That, and it really sucks that things are like that. You said a lot of what he said was correct, but the problem was he immediately jumped to, we need to shut this down and denied any conversation could help fix the issues. Yeah, right. I think like if it were instead done from a lens of how can we be really constructive about this, that could have been better. You know, when you're someone who stands up on a pedestal and says, I'm very smart, I did this, I did that, here's my ethos, right? Here are the reasons why you should believe me. Like, here's a little bit of my resume so you know I'm not talking out of my ass purely. When you do that and you're seen as like that guy, then the moment you do say something wrong, people treat it like you're the Antichrist. This is something that I think any of you who did well in school understand this. If you did really well historically and then you did poorly on one test, you got treated like a failure for that one test, whereas someone next to you could be failing every test and then they do a little okay on one and everyone's like, wow, you're doing so great. Like, the way you get treated is different. I think anyone who did a little better in school has experienced that. This is just like the internet influencer version of it, for sure. I think it's absolutely fine to disagree with people. I think if someone's wrong, absolutely fine to point it out, etc. But there's definitely like, I think there's a lot of real malice in the way people treat someone who is typically right or a little smarter or whatever, or it gives that brand, whether they are or not. I'll say it that way. If they have that brand, the moment they do something that someone thinks is wrong, they're like, this person's actually a f***ing idiot. Most people want someone to villainize and blame. I've also noticed that smart people get villainized and blamed, whether they are smart or that's their brand. If you are seen as smart, people villainize you for it always. Like you get called a know-it-all, you get called a suck-up, you get called a whatever, and you're just like, I like information, that's all. I just wanted to talk about this thing that I was interested in. And again, I think anyone who did okay in school, who did like all right, even if you were average, you would get treated by the kids that were like performing below average like that, right? But I feel like that's something that humans do in general that's really terrible, because we should be rewarding people trying to be smart, trying to do that. I think it's okay to point out when someone's like, oh, I'm super smart, and then you do one thing that isn't, and they're like, what about this stuff? But I don't know. I feel like people historically have always been like looking for fault in people that they see as known as smarter as them, right? It gets a little crazy. It's nothing with him. Yeah, I'm not talking about just him. I'm just talking in general. Like any streamer that has this. I know people are like this with NL, and NL doesn't even claim to be like super smart. He just claims to be more like, he's like worldly because he watched a lot of movies and remembers who the actors were, right? He remembers like bits of information about history because he's read a lot. He's not trying to claim he's a genius. He literally does not say anything to try and tell you that he thinks he's smart, right? Yeah, he's ironic about it, etc. Even so, if he says one thing that's incorrect, I see people go crazy. And he's one of the most beloved because he doesn't have like any real big perceived ego very much. But I see people go insane if he says some fact that's incorrect. But the difference between him and some other people is when someone is like, this is incorrect, he goes, oh yeah, whatever. It makes a joke. He makes it ironic. And he'll admit fault and whatever, right? But he'll go ahead and just like make it funny, right? He's not like, oh, actually it's right because, you know. He will sometimes, if it's one of those things where the person who's saying you're wrong is like, it's about something stupid, right? But yeah, it's the way he takes it, the way he accepts it, and the way he keeps it lighthearted that really makes it what it is. You know, you can see a lot of different examples. And again, like here, one of the big things that always happens is we just pause and I go look it up. If I say a thing and I'm like, I thought it was this chemical, and someone's like, no, it's that chemical, and then people are giving differing chemicals, no, it's actually this chemical in chat, I'll be like, hold on, and I'll just Google it. Right? Like I always pause and I'm like, wait a minute, guys, let's get to the bottom of it. And if I'm wrong, I just go, oh, actually it's this. Okay, right? That's all you have to do, man. That's all people have to do. It's not like hard.